certain phrases that rabbis use that sound very beautiful and spiritual, and usually mean that something difficult is about to happen. For example, when a rabbi says, "We need to have an honest conversation," nobody relaxes. Nobody says, "Oh, good, an honest conversation, this should be fun." Or when a rabbi says, "Tonight, I want to talk to you about community," people sometimes think, that sounds lovely. But the rabbi usually means, somebody did something, everybody knows it, and now we have to talk about it Jewishly. So let me begin tonight by saying I want to talk about community. But not as a slogan. I want to talk about what it actually means to live in community when the world is hard, when truth is distorted, when people are hurt, and when moral clarity is demanded of us. Some of you are aware that this week there was another public attack circulating online connected to my years of service on the Orange County Human Relations Commission and to the months after October 7th, what some might refer to as a hate campaign. Some of you are not aware of it, and I do not want to drag this congregation into every ugliness of public life or the pain that comes with being a target of hate, in particular anti-Semitic hate. But I also know this: there are moments when silence can be mistaken for surrender. There are moments when falsehood, if left unanswered, begins to masquerade as truth. And there are moments when a rabbi should not use the bima to argue about every accusation, but should use the bima to say clearly what our Jewish faith teaches us. So tonight, I do not want to offer a rebuttal. I want to offer a sermon. Not about one post, not about one meeting, not about one organization whose name does not deserve to become the center of Shabbat. But about what it means to live in community when truth is distorted, when Jewish dignity is challenged, and when our values are tested. For 14 years, I served on the Orange County Human Relations Commission. I chaired it for a time as well. I gave years of my life, to that work because I believed and still believe that Orange County needs people of different faiths, races, cultures, histories, and communities to sit in the same room and take one another's humanity seriously. I believe then, and I believe now, that fighting hate is sacred work. I believe then, and I believe now, that interfaith relationships matter, and although my faith wanes a bit here, I keep trying. I believe then, and I believe now, that we are better people when we hear one another's pain without erasing our own. But I have also learned something painful. Even spaces created to fight hate are not immune from hate. Even the language of justice can be misused. Even grief can be weaponized. Even community can be fractured when truth is no longer treated as sacred. And so tonight, under the title, Living in Community, I want to say that real community requires three things. First, community requires truth. Second, community requires moral clarity. And third, community requires courage. Without truth, community becomes propaganda, which I have seen with my own eyes. Without moral clarity, community becomes confusion. Without courage, community becomes silence. And that silence becomes deafening. So, community requires truth. The Torah teaches us, midvar sheker tirchak, distance yourself from falsehood. It is a fascinating commandment because the Torah does not simply say, do not lie. It says, distance yourself from falsehood. Do not stand too close to it. Do not excuse it because it comes from people who use language you admire. Do not repeat it because it confirms something you already wanted to believe. Do not dress it up in righteous vocabulary and pretend it has become holy just because a hater said it. Because once falsehood enters the center of communal life, everything else begins to fall apart. If truth does not matter, then memory does not matter. If facts do not matter, then people do not matter. If history can be rewritten, then pain can be manipulated. And if pain can be manipulated, then community becomes impossible. There's another verse in the Torah, Lo tisa shema shav. Do not carry a false report. Do not create a false report. Do not carry one. Do not spread one. Do not amplify one. And Jewish tradition says, slow down. Tell the truth. Guard your tongue. It's the prayer Cantor just so beautifully sang. Remember that words can wound. Remember that words can endanger. Lies about Jews have never remained only lies and only words. They can become permission slips for danger. Remember that words can build community or can destroy it. This matters not only in one conflict far away, it matters right here. It matters in our civic life. It matters in our schools. It matters in our city councils and our public meetings and in the halls of Congress. It matters online. It matters in the spaces where our children and grandchildren are learning what justice is supposed to mean. Community cannot be built on lies. Not lies about history, not lies about Israel, not lies about Jews, and not lies about one another when you sit at the same table. Secondly, community requires moral clarity. Now, there are moments when a rabbi is supposed to say, this is complicated. And to be fair, rabbis are very good at saying that. Sometimes if you ask a rabbi a yes or no question, the rabbi will say, well, there's a Talmudic debate about that. You just wanted to know if the room was available next Tuesday at the temple. And suddenly you're learning about Hillel and Shammai. So yes, many things are complicated. The Middle East is complicated. History is complicated. The griefs are real. The politics are hard. The future is uncertain. But not everything is complicated. It's not complicated to say that Hamas is evil. It's not complicated to say that October 7th was a massacre. It's not complicated to say that murdering families, kidnapping children, and elders, raping women, burning homes, and celebrating terror are evil. It's not complicated to say that those who did these things are not freedom fighters, as some people said on the public calls when they called for my resignation. Those people are terrorists. It's not complicated to say at all. And moral community requires the courage to say so. At the same time, innocent Palestinians have suffered terribly over this war, over these last years. Children in Gaza are children who suffer. Parents grieving their children are parents who grieve. Every innocent life lost is a universe destroyed, and all of our hearts should break. I've said this before, and I'll say it again from this bima. I mourn every innocent life lost in this awful war, Israeli and Palestinian, Muslim and Christian, every child, every parent, every civilian, every human being created in the image of God. But mourning innocent Palestinians does not require me to lie about Hamas. Compassion does not require confusion. Grief does not require moral surrender. And community cannot be built on those falsehoods. I will not allow anyone to force me to choose between Jewish safety and Palestinian humanity. And I will not allow anyone to use Palestinian suffering to erase Jewish truth. Both communities are sacred, if only the leadership would see so. We can mourn Palestinian civilians and still tell the truth about Hamas. We can grieve innocent suffering and still remember who began this war with massacre, kidnapping, and terror. We can pray for peace and still understand that peace cannot be built by pretending evil is something else. The prophet Isaiah warned us. I need my glasses for this. Ho ha'omrim la ra tov, v'la tov ra, samim choshek le'or, ve'or le'choshek, samim mar la'matok, u'matok la'mar. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. That warning is not ancient history, even though it's 3,000 years old. It's our present moment. When terror is called resistance, when murderers are called freedom fighters, when Jewish grief is mocked or minimized, when Palestinian suffering is used not to build compassion, but to indict Jewish existence itself, Isaiah says, woe. Woe to a society that cannot tell the difference. Woe to a generation who believes in intersectionality and don't understand the first thing about history. Woe to a public life where people are rewarded for distortion and punished for truth. And this is not only about social media. It is not only about one statement or one meeting or one post. It's showing up in our broader civic life. Let's be honest about what we are seeing. There are candidates and movements winning power in this country for whom anti-Semitism is not a side issue, it is a requirement. To be endorsed as DSA, Democratic Socialists of America candidate, to be accepted, to be considered righteous, one must reject Zionism, literally, to get that moniker of their endorsement. That is appalling. It's appalling because Zionism, at its core, is the belief that the Jewish people have the same right every other people claims, the right to safety, the right to sovereignty, self-determination in our ancestral homeland. You may criticize Israel. Israelis criticize Israel every single day. Jews criticize Israel every day. Criticism of government is part of democracy. And argument is part of Jewish life. By the way, parenthetically, you don't find these values in Muslim-run countries. But when only the Jewish people are told that their national homeland is illegitimate, that's not justice, that's discrimination, dressed up as justice. When Jews are told you may participate in public moral life only if you renounce Zionism, that's not inclusion, that's exclusion. Criticism of Israel is not anti-Semitism, but demanding anti-Zionism as the price of moral admission is. And that is not how we build community. The problem is not that Jews are being asked to care about Palestinians. We do care. I care. This congregation cares. The Jewish people have never been indifferent to suffering of all people. Our Torah commands us again and again to care for the stranger, the vulnerable, the oppressed, the hungry, and the grieving. The problem is that Jews are being asked to disappear themselves in order to prove that we care. We are being told that our compassion is only valid if it comes with amnesia. Forget October 7th. Forget the hostages. Forget the history of Jewish exile. Forget the Holocaust, literally. Forget the rockets and the tear tunnels. Forget that Hamas brought catastrophe upon Israelis and Palestinians alike. Forget that Jewish peoplehood is not a political inconvenience, but an ancient covenantal reality, older than almost every other religion. Forget all of that, and then you may be considered moral. No, I reject that. That is not morality. That is definitely not community. That's not truth. Living in community does not require Jews to become less Jewish. Living in community does not require us to surrender our history. Living in community does not require us to apologize for surviving. Living in community does not require us to call evil good and good evil. And finally, community requires courage. So what do we do? This is always the Jewish question. Not what do we believe, not what do we remember, but what do we do? And here's where I think community requires courage. Not the courage of cruelty, not the courage of shouting louder than everyone else, not the courage of becoming those we oppose. The courage I mean is quieter and harder. The courage to stay truthful when falsehood is fashionable. The courage to stay compassionate when others are cruel. The courage to stay Jewish when others tell us to shrink. The courage to remain in public life when public life becomes painful and perhaps even dangerous. The courage to build community when people try to fracture it. And the courage is what allows us to hold ourselves together when the world tries to pull us apart. And courage is to hold accountable those officials who try to tear community apart by either staying silent or encouraging this awful behavior toward one another and then toward the Jewish people. Maybe that's what I want most for us tonight. Not that we leave here angrier, not that we leave here more afraid, not that we leave feeling that the world is too broken to repair. Those are not Jewish messages. But that we leave clearer about who we are, clearer about Zionism, and it's not a dirty word, clearer that Hamas is evil, clear that innocent Palestinian life is precious, clear that Jewish dignity is not negotiable, and clear that we do not have to disappear ourselves in order to care about others. And then from that clarity, we keep living. That may not sound dramatic, but it is. We gather after a hard week, we light candles, we sing, we teach our children who they are. We pray for those who suffer, we mourn innocent children, we stand with Israel, we refuse to let anyone else define Judaism for us. We refuse to let grief become hatred, we refuse to let lies become community. And now to return to where I began, when a rabbi says we need to talk about community, usually something difficult has happened. That is true tonight. It's been a tough week. Something difficult happened. Something ugly happened. And it's not nice when people don't say nice things about you and it gets tens of thousands of clicks. But don't go looking for it because I don't want them to have any more clicks than they do. I'll tell you myself. But maybe that's exactly when community matters most. Community is not proven when everybody agrees. Community is not proven when the room is calm. Community is not proven when nobody has been hurt. Rather, community is proven when we gather anyway, when we tell the truth anyway, when we sing anyway, when we stand with our people anyway, when we keep our hearts open anyway, when we refuse to let anybody make us less Jewish, less compassionate, less courageous, or less human. That is living in community. And may the day come soon when all children, Israeli and Palestinian, Jewish and Muslim and Christian, and all children of God can live without terror, without war, without hatred, and without fear. When that happens, then we can truly live in community. Amen. Thank you. Thank you.